Come to this March 28, 2022 meeting of the Lake Bluff Village Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call the roll.
Hickman. Here. Trustee Brian.
Here.
Trustee Fisher.
Here.
Trustee Markey.
Here.
Trustee Rappin.
Here.
Trustee Ryder.
Here.
Thank you. Please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the consideration of the minutes of the March 14th, 2022 Village Board virtual meeting. It's actually a normal meeting.
That's right.
And is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, I did circulate some amendments to those, so they were changed. Some non-substantive issues, but a lot of typos, so apologies for those, but they have been, and you all handed out those. So.
Any changes besides on the new version? So thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Brian.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Inkman.
Aye.
Thank you. Next is our non-agenda items and visitors. The village president and board of trustees allocate 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the village board of trustees on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the village board of trustees is asked to limit their comment to a maximum of 5 minutes. I do not believe we have anybody in the room who is interested to talk about anything else that is on the agenda. Do we have anybody online who would like to address this board?
It would not appear so.
Thank you. Next item is the village board sets the order of a meeting. The village president and board of trustees will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted during the village board meeting. So I do understand that we have the consent agenda and item 16 that would like to be discussed first. Any discussion on this matter? No? So jumping to the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of acceptance of a correspondence. Please note that all correspondence was delivered to the Village Board of Trustees in the informational reports on February, March 11 and 18, 2022. And item 11, that is the second reading of an ordinance comprehensively amending the village historic preservation regulations and the regulations governing the Historic Preservation Commission. That would be Title 2 and Title 9, Chapter 14 of the Municipal Code. Item number 12, that is a second reading of an ordinance granting a special use permit to CMP Management LLC to operate a membership sports and recreation club at 42 Sherwood's Terrace, Suite number 2, also known as the Farm. And last, item number 13, an ordinance declaring personal property owned by the Village of Lake Bluff as surplus. Is there a request to remove any of these items from the consent agenda? No. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Steve?
So moved.
Second.
And Kate, second. Thank you. Any discussion on these items? So hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Inkman.
Aye.
Trustee Brian.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next would be, as requested, item number 16. And that would be an ordinance granting variations from the village's floor area ratio and building coverage restrictions on 562 Sunrise Avenue. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
On January 20, 2022, the Village of Lake Bluff received a zoning variation application from Donald Shoemaker and Kim Parkinson, jointly, the applicants, for zoning relief necessary to renovate the interior and exterior of the property and add a covered screened-in porch to the rear of a single-family residence located at 562 Sunrise Avenue. The existing building does not conform with the village floor area ratio limitation, and the proposed work would increase both the floor area, a 62% variation, and building coverage, a 4% variation of a building beyond the maximums established by the zoning regulations. At its March 10th meeting, the PCZBA conducted a public hearing to consider the variations and unanimously recommended that the village board grant the requested relief with no special conditions. At its March 14 meeting, member of the village board expressed concern with the nature of the variation request and deferred first reading approval in order to allow the applicant to appear before the board. Staff understands that the applicant will participate in Monday's board meeting and be available to answer any question. So it is a first reading, okay?
Correct.
We have not started yet our conversation here. We have here with us the applicants. Could you please introduce
I'm Don
yourself?
Shoemaker, and my wife Kim Shoemaker. She's on the applicant is Parkerson. That was 2.5 years ago. We've been married now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's kind of the main point of the meeting. Really. The rest of it will work out. But I'm Don Shoemaker. I've lived in the house for about 10 years. Prior to that, my parents lived there. Prior to that, they bought it for my grandmother when my grandpa went into Westmoreland Hospital. I grew up in Lake Bluff on Cambridge Lane. I raised my family in Lake Forest. I'm thrilled to be back in Lake Bluff in that house, and I want to thank you for moving us up on the agenda. I'm in the commercial real estate business, and I've spent many hours in meetings like this not being moved up on an agenda. It's very thoughtful, and it's very Lake Bluff-like, and I appreciate that very much. Kim and I were married a couple of years ago, right before the lockdown, and our house that I purchased from my mother, my parents renovated in, I believe, the mid-'80s, and they put on a garage and an upstairs addition. It was a little one-bedroom house, and it's tired, and you can put a screwdriver through all the siding. It's got some major constructional issues. The house is ready to either be torn down or renovated, and we happen to love the mid-century modern style. We recognize we live in a very special place in Lake Bluff, and especially being locked down there the last few years. And you know, my wife's fairy garden in front becomes quite an attraction with a lot of the people walking their dogs, and we love living there, and we love the house. And when we looked at making plans to it, my wife had known Fred with Morganti Wilson Architects for some time, and we liked their vision for the house a lot. And what we're really trying to do is get our house ready for the next kind of generation, like our grandkids coming to stay with us. And my kids aren't quite ready for that yet, but they should be.
I'm not quite ready for that.
I know there are concerns with our lot line. I can tell you we have 4 neighbors who are all friends, who we've shared our plans with, who are all supportive of what we're doing and happy we're making improvements to our house, and we shared that with them before we came to you. And think we've been very thoughtful with keeping the architecture intact, and we would like our addition to the back of it, which is really replacing what's kind of a porch now, an old porch. We think is a really great addition that we've gone over and over again with the architects, and then we think I can let them address how they've designed it the way they did. But appreciate everybody's consideration and you volunteering your time to do this kind of thing. And we think we're a considerate Lake Bluff resident and think these changes will be good for the community and good for our house and our neighbors. And I think it'll add value to the community. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Could you please introduce yourself as well?
So my name is Monica Muszlowski, the
Move
project,
that down.
project manager on the project.
I'm Fred Wilson, partner at Morganti Wilson Architects.
Thank you.
So as Don referred, the existing home, because of its kind of split level, mid-century modern nature, originally built in 1950, so we're subject to more inclusive FAR rules, meaning that the entire basement counts towards FAR, which puts the existing house as it exists today already, over 50%, I believe it's 52% over allowable FAR. So any modification we would make would, it'd be an existing non-conforming condition. Also, because the main level of the house is raised above 30 inches, so all the decks coming off that main living level count towards FAR. So the proposed screen porch really takes over those existing open air screen porches that count towards FAR anyway, and make it more of a consolidated space that works better for the family, and also kind of ties into the architecture of the home with the transom windows above. And
I would add also that we don't have, because of the mid-century modern, we have a flat roof, so we really don't have any attic space for storage. So that is the other reason we put storage below, which is weather protected. There is a membrane up above it so that water can't get, and it becomes really our storage room, if you will, down below. The aesthetic of one of the things we tried to do with the aesthetic is try to make it look like we were never there. And the aesthetic with the transoms dovetails nicely into the transoms that are just immediately to the south. So that structure, and then the other, by having the columns full height without a cross member, gets into some more structural components. So we thought just adding that transom line would give that sort of look of always have been there. So we wanted that sort of language to be that way. What I love about it is it's a legacy home, right? As Don mentioned. We're giving it to the next two generations, their kids, and God willing, grandkids. So I think that's actually pretty interesting. I think it's a pretty iconic home right there on the walkway. I think people would be very sad if it was gone. I think it adds a nice flavor to the neighborhood. I think Monica touched on it, but this sort of odd hardship, if you will, is our first floor is up on the second floor, if you will. So all our decks, and all the decks that were in the back that we're replacing with the screen porch also counted in the FAR. So we took all that away, and we're keeping obviously the front to look out over the water, but where the screen porch happened, where the screen porch is happening, there were decks that were already counting. I think we're adding to the value of the neighborhood by renovating the home, redoing the exterior. We are not going to impair any of the light. It's in the center of the structure in the rear, so we're not into the planes of light with any of our neighbors. We're not changing anything about congestion, or we're not adding to the fire. And the other thing is, we're 20 feet tall to our highest point, where 34 is our required. And the other one thing I want to point out, we aren't asking for a variation about the pool. We're under our lot coverage, impervious, so that's not even on the agenda. So just, those are our kind of thoughts coming to the project. Do you have anything else you want to add?
no, that's, happy to answer
I
any
would
questions.
just add, my wife and I aren't even really in agreement on whether we need a pool. So I'm not sure why it's part of the application.
Thank you very much. Let's start our discussion on the board. Susan, do you want to start?
Sure. I have read and thought about this the last couple of weeks quite a bit, because I spoke earlier in favor of this, despite the fact that the numbers kind of are surprising, 62% over the FAR. So the way I've given it some thought is that the structure being 20 feet tall is really significant to me. It's essentially a story and a half, and nobody builds a story and a half in this town anymore. So to me, if we can modernize this house and keep it looking like it does today, with the fairy garden and everything, looking as it does today, I think we will have done the community a service. And so that's why, despite the numbers, I think we exercise a subjective view of whether or not the reasons for the bulk restrictions are impaired here. And in my assessment, they are not. And this unusual structure of basically a story and a half is a unusual hardship, or whatever the standard is. Maybe that's an unusual physical condition that I think, in my mind, enables me to support this, despite the fact that the numbers are quite large. And in most other circumstances, I'm not sure it would be appropriate for us to approve it.
Thank you, Susan. Steve?
I agree with Susan. I'm in total support of moving forward with this. To me, getting the neighbors' input, knowing that it already was well over the FAR. I mean, I look at that as grandfather, and you're going a small percent over that now. The height of the building, or of the home, there's not much question to me. I support it fully.
Thank you. Joy?
Sure. I too live in a split level, so I understand the FAR calculations. And I like what you're doing here. I like the design. I like that you're updating it, and the history of the home is not to be overlooked. I walk by your home all the time with my dog. I'm one of the people that sees the fairy garden. I've always liked the fact that it's a little bit different, and it reflects kind of the unique nature of Lake Bluff. I agree too. It's a story and a half. It's not looming. I think the addition, again, you're just adding a small percentage over your current FAR value. And I like the idea that you've already spoken to your neighbors and that they're comfortable with what you're doing. So I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Taryn?
I won't belabor by repeating what everybody has said. I think it's a beautiful, thoughtful design. Kudos. And the character and the charm of our town is reflected, and I would be more concerned with what would happen if you were to just tear it down. So I am supportive for all the reasons that have already been stated.
Thank you, Taryn. Kate?
I didn't get from what you just said or from the information we were given that tearing it down was an option you were seriously considering. Is that?
I think if you saw the budget for what this is going to cost to do, you'd obviously consider that.
No, what I mean is that our job is really to manage expectations for the community at large. So in the previous conversation that we had before we decided to table it, one of the things that was brought up was, with a house with this much of a variation already in excess of the existing bulk ordinance, would this happen anywhere else? We have to think of what other people are going to hear, and the slippery slope that we get up on top of if we allow this. And Trustee Ryder's right, we might not allow it in other circumstances, but I always worry that people will look at other, as this as an example of what they can do. So I'm trying to get a better understanding of what exactly is happening. Are you basically and I love the drawings are beautiful, like what you're doing to the exterior, I think is a huge improvement. I drove by it this morning. I've lived here for 50 years on and off, so I've admired this house always. It's a beautiful example of mid-century, and I've always thought, wow, that would be so cool to sit there and watch the sunrise. I think everyone who walks by it thinks the same thing. But are you basically those decks count toward the FAR, and for all intents and purposes, you're enclosing them? I'm simplifying, oversimplifying
Just the
this.
back deck.
Right.
Yeah.
So the total increase in square footage is 525? Is that about right?
385.
Less than 500 square feet. So it's a de minimis amount, I grant you. And I get it, like, I live in a mid-century house, I don't have an attic. I understand all those things, although I don't consider them a hardship. So I'm torn, because I like what you're doing, but I never got the impression that the alternative was, if we don't get this small amount of square footage, that alternatively we're gonna tear it down. That was never, so I think that might have been the thought people here, sitting here had, and I just wanted to clarify that, because I think it's important that if we were, which we're not going to obviously say no, but if we were, that you would move ahead with the project even if you couldn't do this storage space. That was my question. If you couldn't do this tiny thing, would that be the,
I don't have an answer to that.
okay. That's what I'm asking for. You can appreciate where I'm coming from in terms of expectation management.
We'd like to keep the structure.
I can imagine. I would too, for myriad reasons. So that's what I was trying to understand, because as I said, I'm really torn as to how to move forward, because I think we as a body have to always be mindful of what our real role is, which is, in this particular case, managing those expectations. And would this same, even though it's de minimis, increase and excess be allowed in any other part of town, at any other house, et cetera? So I've just got to kind of maybe hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Kate. Barb?
One of my concerns with this application is that I wanted to understand more fully if everything had been done in terms of trying to take that number, which is currently at 50% over, to be something other than 64. And the FER calculation is, complicated and nuanced, and this counts and that gets a bonus, and we don't need to go into the details, but we know it's not just these are the measurements, they're your numbers. And I wondered if there were opportunities that might be not compromising of the structure, not compromising the utilization of the space, that could have been explored and maybe should have been explored, so that number was something less than 64. So as an example, this may not be a correct application of how to calculate the FAR, but it sounded like if those transoms did not exist or they had been screen material, then that would not have counted. And so that square footage, which may be, let's say, 200 square feet, would not have counted. And so instead of it going from 50 to 64, it goes from 50 to 54, something like that, which again, that helps minimize it. And 400 square feet, that's a 20 by 20 room. That's not, compared to the state of Illinois and how many feet are in the state of Illinois, it's de minimis, but, I don't know, a 20 by 20 foot space, that's a lot of square footage. And the nuances of how the numbers are calculated, we could argue, well, that's silly, or in this case, it doesn't make sense. But I just wanted to know, have we really explored trying to do that? Because I know we get other applicants who want to do X and Y, and they work really, really hard to get it down to, well, now we only need 5%, or, and they've compromised things, and they've paid a lot more money, and so we really have to, as a board, face those people and say, oh, well, they happen to be in a really great location, so we're not gonna make that apply. Or we really like the fairy garden, so we're not gonna make that apply. I want to be able to face the residents and say, well, we've really pushed on this and said, what else can we do to make this not 64%? Because 50%'s a lot, 64%'s even more. And I just want to hear your thoughts on what could be explored.
We did explore, the one missing real element to the home was a screened-in porch, like an outdoor space screened in with all the bugs and everything that come off the lake. We really studied to have it's a room that can have a table in it for 8 and a small seating group. And we did really look, because Kim was very concerned about going into the backyard too. That not just the sort of massing that it was. So we really studied furniture plans and how it was functioning. as our outdoor space, because the front deck, you lose it in August, and it really gets too buggy, and especially in the evening. So we did kind of really look at that, and then we, like I said, that sort of inner U shape, if you will, we really felt like filling that in was where it came. I do think, again, I've been to more of these than I want to count, even though I'm only 29. But the precedent, this is such a bizarre house with the precedent that if you had another home that came and utilized some of these, as you said, the complication of, we're over 30 inches here. One of our things is the addition that was done in the 80s is 10'2" and goes up. So we got dinged for 2 inches, so I do feel it's an extraordinary, odd FAR calculation that the precedent can be pointed to and say, that's a whole different animal out there. Because I really don't, the other side is if you look at it also, we're built 1 year after the cutoff. If we were 1 year before, we don't count the whole basement, which I don't remember the number, 1,500 square feet or some chunk.
But you got to do that. I mean, that's kind of moot point because you got the 50% over. It wasn't like, oh, we didn't get to do our 50% over. No, you did. You got the 50% over. I think that's a moot point.
What I'm trying to point out is just the complexity of
Yes.
how it applies to this
Specific.
house. And we did really study it. We really did to get what we felt was the minimum size to get that double function out there.
I have a question for you before you continue. So if you were to say that this is a split level that is basically a 1/2 layer high, and your FAR calculations are basically biased because of that setup, if you were to remove that half level, where would you be in the FAR?
If we remove what?
The half level.
If you were to actually consider the house as being a ranch level, for
If
example,
you
one
remove the lower
level,
level, what's the square
what would be would we be at 60%? Probably not, but where would we be in terms of percentage of within limits or above limits?
So if
How much is it currently?
the basement currently, I believe, is like 1,500 square feet.
Is the basement like concrete box or livable space? I mean,
It's a combination of,
Combination right now.
it's not real livable. It's a basement.
Is it, I'm sorry, is it a full basement or is it like a garden level
There's
basement?
this much window,
Okay.
garden level.
Okay.
It's under the deck, the windows, like under the front deck.
Okay.
Where you see me and my dogs, you walk by in the morning, it's under there.
Regis.
so was it that question I had about the transom on the screen porch? I'm trying to ask, is it low-hanging fruit to change some design element or switch from glass to screen and then you gain X number of square feet in the FAR calc?
Just changes the whole kind of architectural element of keeping it the same as the transom windows above our dining room to the south of it. It's kind of, we've kind of went over that through our many design review meetings.
Yeah, no,
Mid-century modern.
It keeps it consistent
Yeah.
with the current transom windows that are above the dining room.
I do understand the beauty and the aesthetic, that, I get it. I just know that the board has had other people come and say, well, if I just add some dormers and use that unused attic space, but because of the gonculations of the FAR, then it counts, even though they're not changing the roof, making it higher, and, everybody's got their own flavor of specific tragedy, and yet we've said no. And I think that I agree with everything everyone said. I agree with the aesthetics, I agree with the beauty, I agree with wanting to live here. But I don't think that the argument about wanting to create something for your children adds anything, because we all want to do that. There isn't a person here who doesn't want to create something of lasting value. I think a lot of the arguments are not a standard that we can then apply to other applicants and then say, okay, we can make a decision. And so if I say yes to you, how do I not say yes to the other person? I do see it as a little bit different with it being underground, but I didn't create the FAR calculations. Do we need to address that at some future point in time? Maybe. We're not going to do that here tonight. I'm okay if everyone else thinks that the value of all the other things tip it and they say yes, I'm going to say no, just because I feel uncomfortable that we're valuing the location and the architecture, and it's going to put a burden on me to then not be able to say no when I should say no to another case. So I love everything about what you're doing. I wish the FAR calculations weren't what they were, but I don't see how to create a situation where I say yes to it and we're not creating a burden moving forward.
Thank you, Barb. Let me have your comments, and we could go around a quick pass again, but would you mind reflecting? Or,
I'd just like to say that, not to boost Fred and Monica's egos too much, but we hired them for good reason. We think they're really talented architects, and we really wanted to keep the character of the house the same and not do anything that was negative to any of our neighbors in our backyard. And think we've been really thoughtful in that approach and tried to address it all. So we think it's going to be a nice addition to Lake Bluff, and appreciate everybody's consideration.
thank you. Any additional comments on the board?
The only comment I'll make is, now have the language in front of me, I do think this is a unique physical condition. I respect what Barbara and all of a sudden Kate, thank you, all of a sudden Kate's, I respect what you're saying about these, about the danger of precedent. I think we're to look at the reasons for variation, and I do think, given the timing of when it was built and the unusual structure, and whether it's a reality now or in the future, the risk that something much more enormous could go there, I find that sufficient for a subjective evaluation of the standards for variation. And so that's where I land.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay, go ahead.
Let's go, Kate.
To that point, the standard for variation shall require proof that the variation being sought satisfy each of the following standards.
Right.
And they don't. I tend to agree
think
with
they
Barb.
do.
I think they agree, that they do with the number 1, but I'm worried about 2.
Yeah.
I really am worried about 2. I think this kind of constitutes special privilege. The comments were personal in nature. They didn't, this isn't, I don't have a kitchen. These are much more emotional. And so I feel, I concur with what Barbara said. I do think that we really have to manage these expectations, much like what happened some time ago with the, demolition request to waive the fee. We can't do that because we're setting expectations for the future. So I agree with Barbara. I love the aesthetic visual. I think that architecturally it's beautiful, but we have to be objective and not subjective. And if we are subjective, then we're applying different standards, and we just can't do that. We have to apply the same standard all the time. So I'm also a no.
Thank you, Kate. Anybody else on the board? Joy?
Well, I guess I just wanted to add, we've just come off a huge discussion on historic preservation. And I somehow that ties into this for me. Like, this house is unique. I understand, if we're just looking at the letter of the law and exactly what we're supposed to be doing with FAR, that's one component of this. But the other component is that this structure, to me, is significant to this community from the standpoint of it represents something we don't see very often. And I feel like we're trying to make it livable for now. So I understand that that's a little bit of a emotional decision from that standpoint. It's an emotional call, but I also am impressed that we're trying to save it. And I feel like that's something that we always talk about in Lake Bluff, that we try to save significant structures and we try to make them livable in the modern era. So that's part of the reasoning, I would say, that I feel like it's okay, what we're doing.
I'd like to add also that though the standard is kind of a strict reading that it shall satisfy those 4 conditions, number 2 is highly subjective. I mean, it just gives us a lot, and as a practicing attorney, and as you know, it gives, it has to be interpreted as drafted broadly for us to have the leeway to make these kind of unique calls. So though I did fawn over the beauty of the design, and, you know, I will go home dreaming of living in that home one day, it is not weighing in on my decision. I really do think it actually, this is a unique circumstance that meets these standards for variations. The fact that I'm not clear what we would be doing as far as enforcing if otherwise, because they already are beyond they're above the percentage. So I just want to point out that number 2 is incredibly subjective.
Thank you. Thank you, Taryn. So if there are no other comments, could I please have a motion for,
But you have a motion to approve, you have a motion to approve already.
so I have a motion to approve. So I will, if there is no more questions, this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's a voice vote, not a roll call?
It's a
First reading.
First reading.
Okay,
Anyone opposed?
opposed.
Opposed?
So 4-2.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Drew.
Yep, second reading in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Second reading in 2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Great idea.
Concerned about the ferries, I have protest. They're going to be taken care of.
And sorry about missing last meeting.
Thank you so much. So, resuming the order of our meeting with item number 6 and item A, sub-item A, that would be the warrant report for March 15 to March 20th, 2022. As a summary of background and reason for request, expenditure of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $227,448.89 for March 15 to March 28, 2022. Stating total expenditures of, again, $227,448.89. Documents attached are the warrant report for March 15 to March 28, 2022, again for $227,448.89. The invoice register report shows checks with the status of open or paid. All checks with the status of open are computer-generated checks for the board's final approval. Checks with the status of paid are manual checks processed. Any comment on this warrant? Any questions? So is there a motion to approve the warrant report?
So moved.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Warrants, you get a roll call.
Roll call,
It's a roll call.
expending of funds, yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
The opposite of what you think.
Clerk, please call the roll.
No breaks.
Trustee Inkman.
Aye.
Trustee Brienne.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Should have known that. Sorry about that. Thank you. Item 6B, that would be our February 2022 financial report. Is there a motion to approve the financial report?
So moved?
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Dear Bettina, could you please give us highlights on this report?
Sure. Monthly sales tax revenue on a cash basis for February fiscal year 22 is $304,600.
Bettina, can you turn up your volume, please? I'm sorry, you're really hard to hear.
Oh, sure, sorry.
Thank you. Want to check?
That might not help her.
1 second.
Maybe just get closer to your microphone.
Okay, is that better?
It is.
Sure, I'll start over. Monthly sales tax revenue on a cash basis for February of fiscal year 22 is $304,630, which is $15,877 or 5.5% greater than fiscal year 21 cash basis receipts of $288,753. Fiscal year 22 year-to-date sales tax revenue is $519,110 greater than the May through February fiscal year 21 cash basis receipts. Building permit revenue for fiscal year 22 to date is $334,218, $44,293 greater than the same reporting period last fiscal year. General fund fiscal year 22 total revenues of $10,323,357 are $1,699,370 or 19.7% greater than the January fiscal year 21 year-to-date revenues, which should say February, sorry. Fiscal year 22 current expenditures are consistent with or less than budgeted for the total general fund fiscal year to date expenditures of $9,648,853 are $1,935,992 greater than the expenditures for the same period of fiscal year 21.
Thank you. Any questions to the board?
I just have a quick question about the last point there, the 1.9 million greater than the same period last year. Were there just some big items, or are we still seeing some fallout from COVID, or?
Definitely still seeing fallout and changes, projects that rolled over and expenditures that didn't happen from the prior year in comparison.
Thank you.
Was the prior year particularly low then, such that the 1.9 is in part due to the low year the prior year?
I mean, it's lower in streets, which is public works projects, by almost a little over $1 million, and $300,000+ in sewers, which is, it's all project related.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Thanks, Bettina.
Kate?
Bettina, it's Kate. Hi, I had talked to Drew earlier about page 5 with the pie chart, the sales tax by commercial sector. And I realized that we're limited because of confidentiality. But I thought it would be nice to kind of get a sense of some of these numbers have just jumped. Like, I understand the general merchandise is due to a new law that was passed in 2021, taxing out-of-state retailers who don't have a physical presence here. But like the drugs and miscellaneous retail and agriculture, I noticed the changes are so profound. Could you, and so I realized the number's good, 3.6 is good, but I'm just curious, since a lot of us are newcomers, can you give us shed some light on, like, drugs and miscellaneous retail went from 51,000 to 196. And I just thought that was such a remarkable change that I was interested in if you could shed some light on that, to the degree that you can.
Right, so that particular one, I mean, I'd have to look into. I didn't look at drugs and miscellaneous retail. I focused on general merchandise and the question you had with regards to agriculture and all others. And I could speak to that. That's a swing. You know, the prior reporting to the Illinois Department of Revenue did not have more than 4 reporting entities in general merchandise. And now there are, due to the online taxes that are being paid.
Okay.
That breakout is now sitting up on top in general merchandise, and then the agricultural line has gone down because it's now sitting on top in general merchandise.
Understood. So that law passing really, it can explain that jump in great part. And then,
It can.
yeah, it really can. I don't know if everyone else is familiar with it, but it's such a huge change. And I just did the quick math. It's about $60 per capita in taxes that we're getting. So, and then the auto change up to 2.2, I assume, is just a reflective of pricing in terms of no negotiating.
Well, no negotiating, and then tax on
Used
car
sales.
sales.
Yeah, right, exactly, increased
No,
used
yeah.
car sales. Okay, so that's what explains it, is all that, all down the line. Okay, that's great, thank you for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more comments on the board? Okay, this is a roll call, no, a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bettina.
You're welcome.
The next item is item number 7, our village administrator's report. Mr. Irvin, do you have a report tonight?
No, sir, I do not.
Thank you. Next, item 8, the village attorney's report. Mr. Schuster, do you have a report?
I do not have a report tonight.
Thank you. I will follow trend with item number 9 of the village president's report, and I do not have a report either. Jumping to item number 14, other business. That would be a continued public hearing concerning the Village of Lake Bluff proposed fiscal year 2023 and 2024 biennial budget. The hearing remains open from March 14, and did we receive comments from the public about this item?
Received none.
Do we have any comments on this board? I need to read that first, right?
Sure.
Okay.
There is one person that's attending the meeting. I don't know if they have any specific comment, but I think it's helpful if you read that.
Yes, I will. So as required by law, the village must hold a public hearing on the fiscal year 2023 to 2024 tentative biennial budget, the budget, after which the fiscal plan may be revised and passed without any further inspection, notice, or hearing. Notice of this hearing was published in the Lake County News Sun on March 3rd, 2022. The village board opened the public hearing at its March 14 meeting and continued the hearing to its March 28 meeting to allow additional time for public participation. The finance director previously presented a summary report of a budget on March 14th and will be available to respond to questions at the hearing. So do we have comments on this board first and comments online?
Susie McMurray, I see you're on the call. I don't know if you have any comments regarding the budget, but if you do, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. Apparently, oh, she does have a question. She has raised her hand.
Thank you. So it
Yeah.
will be the proper time to declare this.
Oh, sorry. Susie, if you can you unmute yourself?
I don't have any comment on the budget.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I just came into the meeting, I'm sorry.
It was a high five.
All right. Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. So at this time, I will declare the public hearing closed, and we will move on to the next item. That would be item number 15. Item number 15 is the second reading of an ordinance adopting the biennial budget for the Village of Lake Bluff for the fiscal years commencing May 1st, 2022 and ending April 30, 2024. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you. The tentative biennial budget for the next 2 years includes $15,657,009 plus $2,555,000 in interfund transfers for fiscal year 2023 and $17,326,712 plus $2,147,000 in interfund transfers for fiscal year 2024. These sums include the Village of Lake Bluff funds and the Lake Bluff Public Library funds. The village utilizes a multi-year budget process as it emphasizes long-range planning, budgeting for results, effective program management, and fiscal responsibility. Specifically, the primary objectives of these budgets are to, number one, maintain current fund balances at or above village minimum reserve levels. Number 2, control operational costs. Number 3, continue reinvestment in village infrastructure. And number 4, continue to deliver quality and efficient services. Additionally, this budget has been assembled with the intention to allocate resources consistent with the 2023 Village Strategic Plan. The operating budget, all costs except capital and contingency, for the village and the library is $12.87 million for fiscal year 2023, representing a 4.16% increase when compared to fiscal year 2022. This increase is largely attributed to increased contract and communities expenses. The fiscal year 2024 operating costs are relatively consistent with a less than 1% increase, as one-time contract cost reductions offset the personal service increase for the year. Property taxes and sales taxes continue to be the two largest sources of revenue at $4.55 million and $3.2 million respectively in fiscal year 2023. Sales tax revenue projections are conservatively estimated to return to fiscal year 2020 pre-COVID levels, as consumer supply chain issues may slow the growth contribution based on consumption. Prior budget modifications reduced revenue expectation and deferred certain capital investments, namely contribution to the Vehicle Equipment Replacement Fund and Capital Fund. The fiscal year 23-24 biennial budget fully reinstates contribution of $380,000 to the VERF and $1 million to Capital Fund balances. On February 14, 2022, the Village Finance Committee discussed and recommended approval of this tentative biennial budget document. A draft was available for public inspection on March 3, 2022 at the Village Hall, the Public Safety Building and Library, as well as online at the Village website at lakebluff.org. The Village Board approved first reading of the ordinance at its March 14 meeting. Any comments and any questions from the board?
I did have just one comment, a question really for Bettina. I noticed something, Bettina, on page 3, the revenue analysis, and I was trying to kind of make sense of the sales tax budget shows an increase to 4.2 million, but at the same time, it says projections are conservatively estimated to return to pre-COVID levels. So, but the numbers don't jive. Am I missing something? Pre-COVID levels would be less than 3.6 million. And I'm just, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just trying to figure out how those two work together, since that would be a significant increase from where we are, 3.6 to 4.2, or
So it
3.9
includes
to
home
4.2.
rule sales tax is included in that.
Okay,
number.
got it.
So if you go back to fiscal year 20, we were at 3.2. And
Okay.
about 950.
So that's the total. Okay, that's
Right.
what I was looking for, because it didn't note that was included. Okay, good. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate.
Yep.
Any more questions on the board? Thank you. So hearing no questions, this is a roll call. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Marquis?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkeman?
Aye.
Trustee Brienne?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next is item number 17, a resolution waiving competitive bidding and approving an agreement with AT&T for internet service. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Thank you. The village currently pays about $175 monthly, or about $2,000 annually, for internet service through Comcast Business, with speeds of 150 megabytes down and 15 to 30 megabytes up. Service is provided through a cable modem and in many ways is comparable to what could be obtained at a village residence. The village is implementing a number of technology and infrastructure improvements in the coming fiscal year that will increase the utilization of a village internet connection. This includes police body cameras, redundant disaster backup, and continued remote work and virtual village meetings. The village's existing internet connection does not have the upload capacity to support these applications. Due to the village location, a provider would likely be required to extend a new fiber line to village facilities in order to deliver a higher level of service. Following the March 14 board meeting, staff continued to engage in negotiations and recommends entering into a 24-month contract with AT&T as providing the best value for the village. The contract would provide 500 megabyte download and upload speeds for $1,487.25 monthly, or about $18,000 annually. The village would retain its current Comcast service as a second connection and redundant backup, yielding a total spend of about $20,000 annually. The relevant expense line item has been increased in the draft fiscal year 23 budget. While staff anticipates that no provider other than those contacted could economically serve the village current purchasing policy and procedure manual nevertheless requires a waiver of a formal competitive bidding process prior to awarding the contract. This, in turn, requires a 2/3 affirmative vote of a board of trustees to approve. Questions?
So
Yes, Barb.
the AT&T is going to provide service at a much higher volume, 500 megabits, and the Comcast was 150 down and 15 to 30 up. Is it that Comcast is unable to provide that larger level of service?
No, the answer is they are. And if you remember, we actually brought that was the first agreement we brought to you. Having further conversations with our IT provider and our other IT expert, the idea of having two different pipes, you wouldn't want to have, the idea, like, for example, last year, somebody was digging in the right-of-way by the railroad just north of us, hit the fiber for Comcast, and it was out. And everybody was out, and we were included in that. So the idea of having a different, a source, a different pipe coming into the village, having two different providers gives us better safety and reliability of service.
And having AT&T do that larger volume what was the rationale behind not having Comcast increase and then have AT&T be the lesser? It would have been, because price-wise, you're paying obviously a lot more for that larger.
It came from an objection of mine, that is, you want to, because this is public safety, you want two providers, one being the backup of the other. And so having two different providers with two different physical paths
Yes.
was my objection to the previous plan.
That's not my question, though. My question isn't why are we doing two, but why is Comcast not the larger and AT&T the smaller? Because, cost-wise, it's a lot more, less than 200 and 2,000, it's a big 1,500. So I wondered if there would have been some economy.
Yeah, we got quotes from Comcast. It was comparable pricing.
Okay.
So you're buying in that range.
Right.
It's and it's sold in blocks. Like we were looking at, could we get it for 250 or 300? Where are we at? And they said, well, we generally sell it. You can ask for that, but you can get for 500.
Yeah.
You can. It's like $5 more. So it was a marginal increase because that's how it's normally sold.
Right.
The transactions, sold by the yard, or this
Yep.
is how we sell it. So.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Yep. Trustee Markey had the same question.
I had a lot of questions this afternoon. But actually, I just had a really quick question that I was just thinking about. I feel like it said that they have to put in some new cable, some new equipment for us. How long do we think that'll take?
I don't know the actual answer. I've already received quotes or documents to sign this before it was even approved. I think they're ready to go. I don't know exactly. Glenn, do you know by any chance, or Bettina? about how long it would take to set this up, to make this a go?
Yeah, if you can give me just one moment, in the service level objectives that are there in your packet, I believe one of those speaks to the length of time they take to complete the installation, and I believe they provide credits if they exceed that length of time, but it'll take me a moment to pull that up.
I think it's 30 days is what I'm looking at. But maybe that's the wrong date, hold on. Days after date when AT&T issued CDC to customer.
I think it's 30 days in that.
Yeah, I think it is 30. I think it's 30.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't like 6 months, like
No,
they had to
and-
come and bury line or
Yeah,
do
and-
whatever they have
and-
to do.
No.
In what was just mentioned in the cover memo that President Charlotte read, talked about, you know, the redundant backup that we're doing. We're already doing that, and we're doing that at off hours and weekends, and we're already we're underserved currently, right? So the current system is, you know, if we have a shared voice over IP system, so the phone, that can hurt the quality of the calls. We're already seeing that now. But most certainly, when we introduce the new technology of the body cams and there's no way what we have now will work.
Right, so that's the difference. It always
necessity.
requires more memory,
Right.
more speed, more everything, you know, computer-wise.
The line that is giving from AT&T is a bidirectional equal speeds of 100 megs, and that provides the kind of uploads for
Yeah.
your backups and downloads for the information coming from the web for conferencing. That's what we're buying. Now, the Comcast line that the village has is basically residential, okay? The problem with that is when everybody gets to watch TV at 6 p.m., your line goes down. This is not cool for public service and safety services. So the solution is having a professional line, upload, download equal speeds, and if that fails, a backhaul on Green Bay or wherever else, you still have a weaker line, but that is still there. That means they will still have services, even though the services will have a speed degradation.
That was my question, was how you differentiate the service, which you just did, because it would seem that there would be, I understand the redundancy, and I appreciate that, that's important, but I was still, there until you just said that, there wasn't really any clear explanation of what differentiates AT&T's line service from Comcast.
This is a professional service. Speed up and speed down are the
Right,
same.
as opposed to
If you're
one.
home on your Comcast,
Right.
speed down is going to be very high because you read websites, but speed up, you
Out.
just type a few characters. So the speed up is 10% of your speed down. They don't have guarantee any quality of service, by the way. Now, what the village is contracting for 10 times the price has a guarantee of service. Those are the differences.
Right, and I noticed a credit clause as well,
Yeah, if
which
it's
is
not there.
nice, because that used to be true for residential service with Comcast, and it no longer is. It's impossible. So, but that's good, because the two-way traffic matters here. Whereas at home, it doesn't, for most of us, doesn't mean as much, so that makes a big difference. Thank you for that explanation.
Thank you. Any more questions on the board? So this is a roll call vote with a 2/3 majority for waiving a bidding process. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Inkeman.
Aye.
Trustee Brian.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher. Aye. Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next item is item 18, a resolution approving an agreement to terminate a development agreement between the village and SB 2011, LLC Stonebridge. Is there a motion to approve a resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Appropriate.
On November 22nd, 2021, the Village Board of Trustees approved a settlement agreement with SB 2011 LLC, the owner of a Stonebridge development at 136 Green Bay Road, also known as O-391 Johnson Lane, in order to settle pending litigation regarding the maintenance and future development of a property. Section 4G of the agreement, of a settlement agreement, requires the village to undertake a number of actions, including to adopt a resolution approving an agreement officially terminating the development agreement. SB 2011 LLC and the village continue to implement the various provisions of a settlement agreement. Accordingly, the village attorney recommends that the village board approve the attached resolution, which simply approves an agreement to terminate the development agreement and authorizes the village president to execute that agreement on behalf of the village. Any questions? And I hear no questions. And to this, I will call a voice vote. It is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
You want a roll call?
I think we should do a roll call.
Okay.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Brienne?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Thank you very much. That's a big thing. Thank you very much, all. Next, item number 19 is a trustees report. Do any trustees wish to make a report this evening? Thank you. Next item is item 20, our executive session.
You have yes for personnel.
Yes, so you need to help me on that.
So you're going to look for somebody to make a motion to adjourn into closed session for personnel purposes.
Correct. Could I please have a motion to adjourn this meeting to adjourn this meeting
Not to adjourn the meeting, but to go into closed session.
and to go in closed session?
Yep.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Roll call vote.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Brienne?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Thank you. And we are now in closed session.
So we need to, and so actually this will conclude all the public business for this meeting, so we'll close the virtual meeting as well. Because there's nothing, there's gonna be no other action
We'll be
taken.
adjourning it immediately
Yep.
at the end of closed session.